So there's a little bit of a lag on that. Hey everybody, my name is Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake, and I'm doing a live stream today to talk about the top 3 secrets to get 50-50 custody in your divorce. So you got kids, people fight about 2 things in divorce. They fight about kids and money, and they spend a lot more money and time fighting about kids than they do fight about money. So really, our versus most of the time, probably 80% is spent figuring out kids, and then 20% is figuring out the money. Now, there's things that are that we need to figure out, both of them. You know, it's a confluence between money and children, like support, alimony, these types of things all go together. But really, what most people are about is having time with this. That's our job, is to maximize the time. We spend a lot of time doing that. So let's go over the top 3 before getting 50-50 with your kids. All right, so the first one is being involved parent. So this isn't being involved parent like going through the divorce process. So if you being involved as you're going through this process and you haven't been an involved parent before, then you're probably going to lose here, right? This is deathbed repentance sort of thing. So while that's good, that's certainly not ideal. What you want is been an involved parent in your kid throughout your kid's life. Okay, so what I'm talking about here is you get up with them in the morning, you help them get ready for school, you put them to bed at night, you read them stories, you know, family religious, you pray with them before they go to bed. Doing all of these kind of normal parenting things. You're going to doctor's appointments, you're going to dentist appointments, you're going to parent-teacher conferences, you're doing homework with your kids, you're taking your kids to karate and to church and to their friends' houses. You know their friends, you know their grades, you know all of these things. Because when we get into custody trials and you don't know the names of your kids' teachers, you don't know your kids' grades, you don't know your kids' friends' names, you've never been to this appointment, all of that stuff's going to come out. I guarantee it. We do it every custody trial we have. I ask all of those sorts of questions, okay? And if you are not an involved parent, I'm going to find it out, right? And any attorney worth their salt is going to find it out during trial. You are completely exposed, okay? So be an involved parent throughout your kids' lives, in all aspects of your kids' lives. What's that? Oh, it's turning off. Dang it. We are going to get this. 1 second.
Sorry, I warned you a little too late.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We'll figure these things out. Okay, it's going to come back up. All right, so again, be involved. That is absolutely the first thing. All of the things we're going to talk about, these 3 secrets, being involved in your kids' lives throughout their lives is by far the most important. Okay, let's get this back up. Okay, that's number 1. We just got this vibe a few days ago, and it is super, but it is also a little bit of a pain to use. Did it just disappear? Yeah, I think it did disappear. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go with number 2. Memorize them. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to write here. So number 2 is be home when you file for divorce. Okay. This one is especially for the dads out there. Let me increase that so you can kind of see it. This is especially for the dads out there, because what happens is you decide you're going to get divorced, or one person decides you're going to get divorced. Maybe it's not even mutual, but one person decides it, and then almost invariably that person asks the other person to move out, especially if they're the wife. They will ask their husband to move out of the house because that is, for whatever reason, the socially normative thing to do. Okay. And guys usually capitulate to this, usually say, okay, that's fine. I want everything to be comfortable. So they leave. Now, imagine that you do that and 3 months passes, 4 months passes, 5, 6 months passes. No one's filed for divorce, but your wife has had the kids the entire time, or your spouse. This does happen to women as well. Your spouse has the kids the vast majority of the time, and you see them like maybe 20% of the time. Okay. And then you for divorce, or somebody files for divorce, and you for 50-50 custody. So what's happened is that you haven't had 50-50 custody because you've been out of the house for 4, 5, 6 months. So there's what we call a status quo. A status quo has been entered, and the status quo is that you have 20% of the time and your spouse has 80% of the time with the kids. So you have to overcome the status quo. And the status quo is one of the biggest factors courts look at in determining custody, okay? So you want the status quo to be as close to what you want ultimately as you can have it right now, okay? So you want it to kind of mirror what you want, which means that if you really want 50-50 custody, you really do need to exert 50-50 custody, okay? And the easiest way to do that is to be in the home with the kids when you file for divorce. There's just something about that. It creates status quo, assumption 50-50. And the other things that it does, it really makes the other person uncomfortable. And, you know, we're divorce attorneys. We use leverage however we can. It does make people uncomfortable, which means that they want to get out and through the process as quickly as possible. So what we found is when we say, hey, look, you know, our client's not getting out of the house. Let's just go to mediation and get this thing done. Then we go to mediation. We're in there. The other spouse wants it done as quickly as they can, and they're willing to deal with us more, and they're willing to give our clients more custody and parent of the kids. That's the reality of it. Helped, you know, coming up on 4,000 people through divorce here in Utah. That's what I've seen. It's what a lot of my friends have seen as well. Almost all divorce attorneys will tell you, be in the house when you file for divorce. And here's a tip. Here's another tip. You have left us, okay? And you've been out of the house for 2, 3 months, whatever it is, and then you're going to file for divorce, get back in the house. So just say, hey, look, I'm coming back in the house. I'll sleep in the basement. I'll sleep on the couch. You do whatever is necessary to get back in there and then file for divorce. Absolutely one of the most important things that you do to get 50-50 custody with your kids when you're going through divorce. Okay, so let's move on to number 3. I'm going to try to write a little bigger here. I apologize for my handwriting because it's absolutely terrible. It's always been terrible ever since I was a little tiny kid. So, okay, so fight, all right? You have to be willing to fight if you want 50-50 custody. Again, especially your guy in Utah, the assumption in Utah is not 50-50 custody, right? It is more along the lines of 35% to the dad or 40% to the dad and 60 to 65% to mom. It's just kind of how it works out in most cases. So if you really want 50-50 custody, you got to fight for it. We have been through this process with, you know, lots and lots at this point. Lots of guys that are pilots, lots of guys that are truckers, lots of guys that are stockbrokers, any range, doctors, like any range of occupations, went through it with tons and tons of guys. How to help everybody get 50-50. And I get this question all the time. Can I even get it? Is it even worth fighting for? If you're involved dad or if you're an involved parent and you're in the house with divorce and you're not like selling crack out of the back of your car or something like that, yeah, it's absolutely obtainable, but you have to be willing to stand your ground and go for it. Most of the time, what we found is that guys will come in, or women will come in, because it's not just guys. Our clients will come in, they'll say, I want 50-50. And we say, okay, you know, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take these steps and we're going to go through this, have your back. We will do everything possible to get you 50-50 because that is your number one. And then we get into negotiation. We go to mediation. And they realize that their spouse is just not quite there. It's a little bit of a, okay. The spouse is just not quite there. And there's a little bit of a glare coming off something here. Might be a window. And they're going to have to fight for it, right? They may have to go to a custody evaluation. Was not. Well, that's not it. Okay. Anyway, we're talking about fighting. We go to a custody evaluation, or we have to go to a custody evaluation. We have to do this, that, or the other. And then they just give up and they say, well, I don't really want to do that. I'll just take 30% or I'll take 35%. And look, if that's where you are emotionally, if that's where you are and you just can't do this, then that's okay. And we'll do whatever we can for you. But again, if you want 50-50, you just have to realize in the beginning, things are going to be hard and that you are going to have a decision point and you are going to have to decide at some point, do I continue the fight to get 50-50 with my kids so I can have them with me all the time, so I can exert influence on their lives, so I can be a true parent to them and maximize my time with them, or am I going to give up? Okay. Those are really the two options you have, and always going to come to that decision at some point during your divorce. And you just have to realize that if you want 50-50, you've got to make a decision to fight. There's no way around it. So keep that in mind. Well, there's that glare coming off. I wonder where it is. All right. Okay. So those are our 3 top secrets. And then I'm going to give you a bonus. Which is be ready to spend money for time. Okay. This is what I mean by that. You ready to spend money for time? Sometimes the other parent, it's going to sound dirty, but it's not. This is just the way things go. Sometimes the other parent simply wants more money in exchange for time with the kids. So one parent will have the advantage of a divorce case, and they should, they think 60, 65, 70%. They're willing to come down to 50-50 if they get more money, if they get more money in child support, if they get more money in alimony, if they get more money in assets, they get less money in debt, whatever it may be. Okay. So you have to decide, am I going to trade money for time with my kids? And for me personally, this is an absolute no-brainer. I'm just trading money for time with my children. Even if I feel it's a little bit dirty, I'm still going to do it, because ultimately the thing that's most important to me is time with my children, is the ability to exert my influence in their life, is to be able to teach them, to be with them. Okay, that is my greatest joy. And for you, I hope that's your greatest joy as well. Realize that if that is, then you might have to trade money for it, even though it feels a little dirty to you. Okay. It's just the reality of negotiation. It's just the reality of divorce. And you can lament about it all you want. I hear people lament about it all the time, but we trade money for things we value every day. That is the purpose of money. Okay. The purpose of money is to take dead dollar bills and to make them alive in something that gives us joy and gives us pleasure. Okay. And if that is what we do with money, then spend it on your kids. It's okay. It feels a little bit dirty. It feels like you're losing it to your ex. Whatever, man. If you want the 50-50, sometimes you got to pay for it. That's just the reality of it. So that's the bonus right there. Okay. So those are the 3 secrets to getting 50-50 custody with your kids. And we got the bonus in there. That is what I had for this portion. Do we have any Q&A?
Yeah, I do. And if you want to just go ahead and write a question on the board, so if anybody joins the next little bit while we're answering some questions, they kind of know what's going on.
Okay. If they can read my handwriting, we will do that. Okay. So now we got some Q&A going. So talk to me.
So the first question that we got was, I believe it came during the first that you were talking about. It said, are you okay with intimidating the soon-to-be ex and okay with forcing yourself back into an unhealthy situation? And I think they're referring to when you were talking about moving
back into the house.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So moving in as intimidation. Okay, so that is an I promise. So I don't see moving in as intimidation, all right? I see moving back into the house as a realistic thing to do. So what you don't do if you're moving into the house, because your spouse is never going to want you to move back in the house. That's just the reality of it, okay? But what you don't want to do is come back in the house and act like cock of the walk, okay? And take over the house and do that sort of thing. And that's not what I advocate at all. I say, I'm moving back into the house. I will move anywhere in the house that is the farthest away and try to make you as comfortable as possible, okay? But I am going to be here because I am these kids' father or mother, and this is the way we're doing it until we get the divorce done, okay? That's probably the situation, but I'm not here to make a stink. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to intimidate. I'm not here to do anything like that. I will sleep on the recliner. I'll sleep on the couch. I'll sleep in the basement. I'll sleep in the bathroom. I don't really care. I just want to be in the house for my kid as we're going through this process. So I'm not advocating intimidation at all, but I am advocating you standing up for your rights in order to secure 50-50 time with your kids. And one of the ways to do that is to be in the house when you file for divorce. Okay.
Another question that we got, someone was asking if you could please go over the first point that you made. I'm maybe a little bit late, so.
Oh, okay. The first point was, man, now I erased him. 1 second. Oh, no, it's on the phone. What was my point? Do you remember?
Being an involved parent.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So be an involved parent. Okay. And don't just be involved when you're going through divorce or right before you're going through divorce. We can see through. I'm a trial attorney. My attorney's here. We got 7 of them. I think we have 7 or 8, hiring a new one. We're all going to expose you if you have not been an involved parent and you play like you are. And then we get into trial because I'm going to ask you what your kids' grades are. I'm going to ask you who their friends are. I'm going to ask you who their teachers are. I'm going to ask you who their church leaders are. I'm going to ask you all these things. And if you don't know them, you're going to look silly in front of the court. Okay. So, I mean, be involved. If you haven't been involved for a long time, you're going to get exposed. So really, you need to be an involved parent for kids' lives in every aspect of their life, in education, their physical development, their spiritual development, their medical, going to the doctor, going to the dentist, going to parent-teacher conferences, all of these things, right? You need to be involved with their friends because you are. And if we go to trial, well, one, you're just much more likely to get 50-50 because your spouse realizes that you've been involved and you've been trying, right? You're not going to be Disneyland. And then the other thing is when we get to trial, you're going to know all this about your kids and you're not going to get exposed as a fake. Okay, what else we got?
No more questions on this end, I see.
No? Okay. All right, well, hopefully that was helpful, and I appreciate you being here. We're here every Monday at 11 Mountain Time going over secrets, tips for divorce. I think the last one we did was the top 5 mistakes that people make during divorce. We'll be here every Monday going this. So if you need any help, you can always directly message me and ask me questions. I'll put the Q&A for the next show, and then we will be back. Oh, there one more?
Well, someone asked if you answer questions. I just want to say yes. He's answering any questions.
Yep.
You guys
we're doing a Q&A.
So if you have any other questions before we close off, then go ahead and ask them. We'll give you a few minutes, I think. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that was it. I was at the end of it. So, okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. And
I have one if that's okay.
Yeah, go. And I'll just say this: if you like this content, if you want more content like this, we have about 400 videos up on YouTube, tons of videos on TikTok as well. So you can go to those media and look through all of them, subscribe on whatever medium or whatever social media you're on. You'll get more of this. We're dropping videos every day. We're giving you tips on divorce. We're giving you tips on custody. We're doing everything we can for you. Always keep in mind, though, that we are Utah attorneys, not New York attorneys, we're not LA attorneys, Texas attorneys. We give these general ideas about how things work, but really they're Utah specific. So keep that in mind. And if you ask a question, you are not my client. The only way you become my client is for us to sit down and talk, and we give you a specific legal plan based on your circumstances, and then you pay us to represent. Just keep that in mind. But if you do need help with your divorce and you're here in Utah, give us a call. We're here for you. We do more divorces than pretty much anybody else in the state, and we have a system that allows us to communicate with our clients really, really well. We can communicate constantly with our clients, because the number one complaint people have with divorce attorneys is, and I can't get a call back. So I've just gone through and I've solved the problem. We even cap the number of cases the attorneys can have. You can go other places, they have 60, 80, 90 clients simultaneously. We don't do that. We cap the number low to keep the quality really high, so we can spend the time that's necessary, give the attention that's necessary, and communicate at the level necessary to help our clients maximize the time with their kids and to maximize their money. So if you need help with your divorce in Utah or your custody case in Utah, give us a call, 801-685-9999, or you can go to our website. It's www.utdivorceattorney.com, or you can just Google Marco Brown. It's going to come up. You can hit the webpage. You can call in. We're there for you.
Okay, we've got a few questions.
Okay.
First question is, what if the other parent is not taking the child on days they're supposed to?
Okay, so, all right. So missing parent time. PT is parent time. Well, so this is going to come in a couple stages. So if this is before you're divorced and the parent is already missing parent time, then it's going to be really hard for that parent to ask for more parent time, right? So if they're asking, let's say they're asking for 50-50, but they only take the kid every other weekend for 2 days, right? Like, why do they think they're going to get 50-50? So that's the first thing to think about, like, before the divorce is actually finalized. If you're not exercising full parent time, if you're not fighting for what you want, the parent time you actually want, and exercising that, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to get it. Okay. If this is coming after the divorce or the custody case is finalized, and they're simply not taking the amount of time with their kid that they can, right? So say they're given, out of 28 days, out of a month, they're given 10 overnights, okay? And they're only exercising 5 overnights. So they're like full on missing 5 days or 50% of their time. Then there's not a ton you can do, really. They're just missing time with their kids. Now, if this persists, let's say this persists for more than a year, and they just aren't taking the time that they're given under the divorce decree or under the custody order, then at that point, after a year, you can probably go back in and have the decree modified or the order modified to reflect the reality of the situation of what's gone on over the last year. And by doing that, by modifying it, you get more parent time, right? And you standardize that. And then child support's going to go up as well. So there are some reasons that you want to do this, but you have to wait for a while, because if it's 6 months and they haven't been exercising, no judge is really going to change it. If it gets to be over a year, I think then we have a conversation about changing the custody order.
Okay, next question. What happens if dad gets 50-50, but his first extra day, daughter breaks her finger and he doesn't do anything?
Oh, so we'll call this the broken finger question. Okay, so this comes up. This is more, I'll generalize this question. This is really a question about whether or not a parent is kind of suitable to be a parent, right? Because you just don't take the kids to the doctor, or you don't watch them well enough, you don't do these things. So if this persists, then you have a problem, okay? If a kid breaks a finger and dad says, hey, look, I'm not going to go to the doctor because it's a broken finger. They're just going to tell you to strap it onto the next one over here, the next finger, and deal with it, which is kind of what they do with broken fingers most of the time. Then that's probably not great, but that's not going to like change the custody very likely. So if the parent were to say, do that, and then they broke a leg 6 months later, and the parent didn't take him in, or the kid gets pneumonia or COVID or whatever, and they're just not doing what is necessary to keep the kid healthy and not taking him to the doctor, and that's repeated, then there might be something. But just a one-off, that's going to be super annoying. You should certainly document that, but it's not going to change anything from a 50-50, and especially if you have an order that's very young. Okay, if you just got this 2 or 3 months ago and this happened, there's really no court in Utah that is going to change custody at that point. It has to be a repeated sort of lack of ability to parent a child and give the child the medical care that's necessary.
If you have an agreement to alternate years for claiming children for taxes, but the other parent disappears from the child's life, can I claim them moving forward?
Okay, so this is taxes. So here in Utah, let me answer this question about here in Utah. Here in Utah, almost every decree or will say something like the following. You alternate years of claiming tax exemptions, right? But the person, you can only claim the child if you're up on your child support and support obligations, okay? So really what that means is paying child support, paying for medical costs, out-of-pocket costs, premium costs, daycare costs is in there as well. So you're up on all of those costs for your kid, and then you can claim, okay? So you aren't paying child support if you're not current on those costs, then you're not going to be able to claim your child during that year, and the other parent is going to be able to claim the child. So I would imagine if the other parent is just taken off and you don't hear from him, he or she is probably not paying anything either. So in Utah, that would mean that you would be able to claim the child on taxes from here on out until they got back and paid all of the arrearages and kind of got up on their child support.
Okay. Next question. Sorry, I'm getting a lot. What happens when your divorce is stalled? My lawyer hasn't responded to me in 2 months.
Okay. This is non-communication. Okay. So like I said, this is one of the major problems with attorneys. This is what clients hate. So this is the reason here at Brown Family Law, we have the system that we do where every client gets a call every Friday, regardless of the number of times that we've talked to them during that week, okay? Because we never want this thing to happen. We want communication to be ongoing with our clients continuously, but almost no attorneys do anything like that. So the problem you're having is very, very normal. What I would suggest, if you haven't received a call in 2 months, I would call the attorney's office, literally do this, call the attorney's office every day for a week, probably 3 days, and you will get a call back. That's what we do with really super non-communicative attorneys. When we're going to deal with them, is I just tell them, I call them every day until they pick up the phone, and that's usually 3 days. So give that a try. If that doesn't work, then you have a serious, serious problem, and you need to probably find yourself another attorney. But I always counsel people to go back to their attorney and have a real frank conversation. Hey, look, I'm just not getting the communication I need. What can we do about this? How can we set up a systemic communication so I always get notified about what's going on? And then if maybe that rattles the attorney into some sense, right? And then you can continue. That's totally fine. But if you can't get that, then you really need to start looking for another attorney.
Okay, Marissa asks, how do I keep my house? I've been paying all the bills for a year and a half, and he has no relationship with my kids either. He just abandoned us, and my husband has been out of the home for a year and a half. He hasn't paid anything on the house.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the home and 1.5 year absence. This is tough, and I'm sorry you're going through this. People who just abandon their kids, it's a rough one. So here in Utah, if you were to get divorced, what would very likely happen is that he would get a portion of the equity in the house. So let's just say, for the sake of numbers, let's say that you were married and you own this house while you were married for 5 years. Okay, so you've owned the house for 5 years, you've been married the entire time. And you were living together, building on the mortgage the first 3.5 years. Okay, so we have 3.5 years. That's horrible, but that's a 3.5. Okay. And then you, for the last 1.5, oh, that's even worse. Okay, I can't do that. All right. Okay. So you're together for 3.5 and apart for 1.5. Okay. So for this 3.5 years, you're going to split the equity 50-50. Okay. And for this 1.5, you're going to get all of the equity in the house because you've been paying everything in the house. Okay. You've been paying bids, you've been paying everything else. You're very, very likely to get 100% increase in the equity in the home during that 1.5 year period that you're separated. But during the 3.5 year together, he's likely to get half of the equity that accrued during that period of time. Okay. Hope that makes sense. That's very likely how it would go. It's really unlikely if you're in Utah that you're going to get 100% of the house unless he or she just doesn't care and it doesn't go after the equity. Okay, so it's really black letter law that the spouses share the equity, and it's very hard to get around that. But who knows? Maybe he's just completely abandoned it and he feels guilty, and you ask for 100% of the equity and he doesn't really care, and he's like, yeah, whatever, I'll give it to you. So you might as well throw that Hail Mary, right? But if not, very likely to go along with that calculation that I gave you. Okay. What else we got?
Okay. Next question is, what if my ex-wife is going crazy, starts verbally abusing ex-husband's new girlfriend's kids, breaking windows and slashing tires, got a restraining order, pretending her son died to get a reaction from soon-to-be ex-husband?
What's going to happen? Are they still going through the divorce process?
That's all the info I have.
Okay, let's assume they're still going through the divorce process. She has entered Crazy Town, and going to Crazy Town when you're getting divorced, not a good idea, right? Like, very likely not going to get a ton of time with your kids if you're slashing tires, breaking kids, screaming at people, swearing at them, and doing these sorts of things. So have a good attorney to help you out during this period of time, but you should be documenting all this stuff, giving it to the attorney, and then just take it to her. Okay, like that's totally fine. Never be a jerk, but when people are slashing tires, peeing cars, doing crazy psychotic stuff like that, they deserve a lot of time with their kids until they get there. Okay, so yeah, give that attorney and then go for it.
Okay. Next question. Sorry, they keep coming in so fast.
No, it's okay.
How after can rights removed?
Okay. So abandonment. That's a really, really vague question. So I'm going to try to extrapolate away from that. So in Utah law, there is really no such thing as abandonment. Okay. You can leave. So you leave the house, we don't really call it abandonment. It's leaving. Terminating right after abandonment. So we don't, in Utah, if we're talking about terminating rights to children, parental rights, we don't really do that so much for abandonment. There's usually something else that goes along with it. And the reason for this is children need child support, okay? And the Utah courts are loath to terminate parental rights when there's somebody out there that can pay child support, when there's a parent out there that could be on the hook for paying child support. So they almost know it. They almost always will terminate if there's abandonment and then there's a new person to take over the parental responsibilities for that child. So you get remarried and your new wife or husband is going to adopt the children. So often when we do this, we will actually file an adoption procedure, and then in the adoption procedure, we file to terminate the rights of the other parent in order to kind of do it all at the same time. Okay, hope that makes sense. But if you're just looking to terminate rights because the parent hasn't been around for a long time and there's nobody else that's going to step in and be mom or dad for that kid, that's going to be extraordinarily difficult in Utah. These are good questions.
What do you do when the judge doesn't like your attorney and it shows in court?
Oh, crap. Okay. Oh, that's terrible. All right, so judge hates attorney. Well, one is that you find a good attorney up front, okay? So good attorney up front. This is the best way to deal with it. If you pick a bad attorney and then have to go through this, you're just playing from behind the 8 ball. So you want to find a good attorney. And that means that you have to research it. Okay. The best ways to research this are the best way, you go to whatever attorney you know and ask that attorney, who would you recommend? Which divorce attorney would you recommend? Okay. That's kind of the first way to do this. Then after that, you want to look for an attorney that does divorce or child custody 100% of the time. Okay. And you can determine this usually from their website. If they have, if they do divorce and personal injury, car wrecks, if they do real estate, if they do, transactional work, if they do water rights, if they do all these things, it's all on their website. That means they're not specialists in divorce. Okay. They're doing a ton of stuff and they do a few divorces, usually probably like 5 or 10 a year. Okay. That's not what you want. You want an attorney that does this stuff 100% of the time. So try to figure that out. If you can't figure it out from their website, then you need to ask them. So call their office and say, hey, I want to meet with this attorney. What percentage of this attorney's total workload is divorce or child custody? And they should be able to tell you. And if it's any less than 90%, no, don't do it. I just don't think that attorneys who dabble in divorce are good enough to really help people get what they want and maximize the time of their kids and maximize their money. Okay. So there's a reason here at Brown Family Law, we do one thing, we do divorce and child custody, and that is it. Okay. I couldn't do a DUI if I tried. I could not sell a piece of property if my life depended on it. I literally don't know anything about those areas of law. I have friends who do that, and I shove that stuff out to my friends and people I trust. But I do one thing. I know divorce like a brain surgeon knows the brain, because I want to be able to help my clients maximize the time of their kids and maximize their money. So that's a very, very important way of finding a good divorce attorney. And then the third thing is sit down with that attorney and think to yourself, as you're meeting with the attorney, how's this going to look in court, right? Like how is a judge going to react to this person as a person in court? So if you don't like the attorney you're sitting down with, chances are the judge is not going to like him either. Like seriously, and I'm not being facetious. I'm not being a dork here. Like if you don't like this person because they're weird or they're not charismatic, you don't think they know what they're talking about, you're probably right. And that's very much going to be amplified by a judge who knows what's going on. So if you're not confident, like, no, just realize like judges is very likely not going to be confident either. So that's the best way, is to pick well at the beginning. If you get into a spot where you have been bamboozled by an attorney and it becomes very evident that the judge does not like that attorney and is going poorly for you, then you need to have a sit down with your attorney and talk through it. See if there's something you can do or he or she can do to rectify the situation. If not, then you need to go find yourself an attorney. And I don't say that lightly. I really don't like people switching attorneys in the middle of their cases, because I tend to think it demonstrates to the judge that you might have a problem. Okay. So I'm really, really wary about it. But if the judge simply doesn't like your attorney, then you very much need to think about getting another one.
Do all laws in divorce go for all states?
Ooh. Read that again.
Do all laws in divorce go for all states?
So universal divorce laws. No, they do not. Every state is different. So every state has different laws. Some of them are exceedingly different, and then some of them are fairly similar. Okay, so I know at this point in my career, I've been doing this 11 years, helped up close to 4,000 people go through the process. I've collaborated with and know hundreds and hundreds of attorneys across the United States at this point. So I talk with them about the laws in their particular states and how they contrast and how they're similar. So Arizona, fairly similar. They're a community property state, an equitable division of the assets and debt state, but 95% of the analysis when it comes to assets and debt is exactly the same between Utah and Arizona. Okay, so they're fairly similar. Some pretty big differences, though, between the two states, and sometimes we have to kind of figure that out to determine where our clients should file for divorce, whether it should be in Utah or Arizona, which one's more advantageous to them. But it's pretty similar stuff. When it comes to child custody, Arizona and Utah, a little bit different. Arizona is more of a 50-50 type of state than Utah is. Utah is more of kind of a 60-40, 65-35 state. California is exceedingly different than pretty much anywhere else in the United States. California is it's its own place. So they have very, very interesting laws out there, very different laws than Utah. Child support is much higher in California. Alimony is much higher in California. 50-50 almost entirely in California. You can't even move. There's no chance you're going to be able to move out of state if you get divorced in California, from what I've seen. So very different sort of legal regime than Utah. South Carolina, North Carolina, you can't even get divorced, I think, until you've been separated for a year. In Utah, you can get divorced within 45 days. Okay, so no, there's a lot of similarity between the laws, because we're trying to do what's best for kids. And we all have this idea, all the states have the idea that somewhere around 50-50 is a split for assets and debts is where you should be. But every state has its own very peculiar laws, and you need to know those, and you need somebody within that state who just does divorce in that state. Again, do not pick people who do divorce 10 cases a year or 10% of their time. You want divorce attorneys who do this in the state where you are 100% of the time. Okay.
We'll probably have this be the last question.
Okay.
Can you explain collaborative law and family?
Okay, so collaborative law. Collaborative law is the idea that we don't go to litigation. So litigation is actually going into court and having hearings in front of about things in court. It's an adversarial process, right? And sometimes that is absolutely necessary. We have cases. I don't really dig litigation for divorce. We try to negotiate almost everything when we can, but there are times when we, as attorneys, need to put on boxing gloves and punch the other person in the face in court. It is just the way it is sometimes. So sometimes an adversarial process is exactly what's necessary, and that's exactly what we do. The vast majority of the time, though, that leads to increased acrimony, it leads to increased cost, it leads to increased time in the divorce, and it messes up kids, okay? So we're really selective about when we do it as attorneys, but most of the time, we are getting into what is essentially a collaborative process. So the collaborative process is taking care of things outside of the litigation process, so outside of court, usually by means of mediation, okay? So get together, share all information. You're not hiding information for the other person. You lay all your cards on the table during a mediation session, usually more than one in a collaborative process. And then you just work through everything, okay? And you're not withholding info, you're not withholding data, you just put it all out there, you deal with everything right up front, and you negotiate kind of in real time, face to face with the other side, which is kind of uncomfortable sometimes, but that's the collaborative process. It's okay. We use it every once in a while in the right situation. It is not for everybody though, because most of the time you can get to the same place as the collaborative process, but you don't have to like sit down and share everything with the other person in real time. Like we can be in mediation, we can be in different rooms negotiating, and it's a little more adversarial, but really we're trying to get that same place. And I haven't noticed a ton of difference between the results we get in the collaborative process and then the results we get in just a normal mediation process. We're separated. You kind of, jockeying for position, a few things like that. I just really haven't seen that much of a difference between those two approaches. So we usually use the latter. We're usually in different rooms negotiating with each other. But like I said, in the right circumstance, there's a lot of trust between the spouses. The collaborative process can be absolutely advantageous.
Okay, that's our last question.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. These questions have been fantastic, and I really appreciate you being here. Like I said, every Monday at 11 Mountain Time, we're going to come here. We're going to give you tips. We're going to give you secrets. We're going to help educate you on divorce, child custody, and then we're going to answer your questions. So thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.